Morning, everyone. Good to see you today. We are going to continue in Matthew 24. I wanted to sound way loud. Am I loud? Man. I'm definitely one of those guys that do not like to hear my.
If you can hear yourself, that's the perfect call.
Well, you do have a little bit of experience in the hearing it yourself, right? Well, we're going to kind of do a little bit of review, so let's at the end of first. I was kind of playing when I was in my first. And remember the guy teaching us that we learned a whole lot of stuff. But to talk to the guy on the back row, and about the time you think you're too loud, just right. Is that way everybody can hear you, and enunciation and all that stuff. It was really cool. I never just usually when you get up there, so it's very good.
Yeah. The guy back there.
The next day you can barely hear you.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so we're going to have a class today on acting and how to. I'm kidding. All right, Matthew chapter 24. And last week we were looking at what this seems to imply and what it's going toward. I wanted to, number one, identify and notice just a lot of the imagery, not so much the metaphors, but just the imagery, the motifs, a lot of the things that Jesus uses here. Specifically, in verse 28, Right now, I'm gonna hit on verse 28, and then we're gonna be on verse 29. And as we understand, and I continue to say we understand because it's not specifically stated here, other than whatever he's talking about is going to happen within these people's generation. But it's never stated. It doesn't seem that Jerusalem's going to fall. That seems to be implied pretty strongly. So in verse 26, so if anyone tells you there he is out in the wilderness, do not go out. Or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For as the lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. So if you would, or if you want to, we're going to go over to Isaiah 13 and then 34. And this seems to be where this is taken from. And I want you to notice, obviously, what this is referring to, what this is talking about. The whole chapter 13 of Isaiah is talking about a prophecy against Babylon and how God is going to come after Babylon. And a little aside here that doesn't necessarily matter what we're talking about here, but in verse 4, listen a noise on the mountains like that of a great multitude. Listen an uproar among the kingdoms like nations missing together. Most of your versions probably say Lord Almighty. But the word Almighty there is Shaddai. So we get the word Yahweh Shaddai is mustering an army for war. Now normally, whenever you hear the word El Shaddai, what are your thoughts? What do you know about that term? And I'm not asking you to think too hard and get all theological. Just what comes to mind? Because what comes to mind to me is an Amy Grant song. El Shaddai, Eric Khan. And if you ever actually read through that song, I don't know if you've ever done it before other than listening to it, there's a lot of God names in that song. So this is that term, Yahweh Shaddai. And that's the idea of Yahweh Almighty, the God of all, is mustering an army for war. And this speaking of what God is going to do against Babylon. And so verse 6, wail, for the day of the Lord is near. It will come like destruction from Shaddai. Because of this, all hands will go limp. Every heart will melt with fear. Terror will seize them. Pain and anguish will grip them. They will look aghast at each other, their faces aflame. See, the day of the Lord is coming. The day of Yahweh is coming. A cruel day with wrath and fierce anger, to make the land desolate, to destroy the sinners within it. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. Rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. I will punish the world for its evil, the wicked for their sins, etc., etc. And Isaiah 34 says much the same thing. So Isaiah 13 seems to be toward Babylon. Isaiah 34 is against the nations that God is going to bring this action. And one of the reasons that, not just I think, but that this is interesting is that Jesus pulls Isaiah 13 and possibly 34 to apply to who? Jerusalem. And so the very idea, verse 29, immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. So if you're a Jew and you're reading this, the Jews were very big on apocalyptic language, visuals, imagery, motifs. And so if the sun is darkened and the moon will not give its light, the stars are going to fall from the sky. And there's a whole, idea Jewish-wise about the stars falling from the sky and what all that means. Heavenly bodies will be shaken. What idea is being given here regarding Jerusalem? Total destruction. Total destruction. It's going to be gone. And I find that very interesting that Jesus, in this entire dialogue here, talking about when that day will be as the whole chapter begins, inserts Isaiah 13 about what God was going to do to Babylon. And it's like he copy and pastes that same visual and applies it to Jerusalem, and that Jerusalem will fall. And also want you to notice that the very things that the Jews would view as good for them, that God is going to go up against the nations, God is going to bring them victory of good things, of blessings, all of those ideas. Then will appear the sign, verse 30, of the Son of Man in heaven. And all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, what is this in context to? The destruction of Jerusalem. So the Son of Man is going to come on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He's going to send his angels with a trumpet call. All of this, again, if we understand it correctly, is about the destruction of Jerusalem. So again, all of the motifs used for other nations, whether it's Babylonia or Persia or whoever, Jesus is applying that same language to Jerusalem in these crowds with the Jewish leaders listening on. And so it's no doubt And this is another little aside, but it's no doubt, I want to encourage you that once they get ready in the garden and they're ready to take him, he has built this up and frothed it up and churned that soup so much that they're ready to take his head off. Which no doubt shows whenever they, the guards are beating on him and the high priest and all the things that are happening. He just told these crowds that you, Jerusalem, are going to be dealt with the same way Babylon was, the same way the Persians were, the same way pagan secular nations were handled. God is going to take care of you in the same way, his own people. So the Son of Man is going to come up against Israel in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. His angels, sons of man's angels, his messengers are going to come against Jerusalem and completely destroy it. Any thoughts about that? Okay, let's go over to Mark and read Mark's account of this, Mark 13. And then we're going to look quickly at Luke's. Now, I believe it's very important for us to notice, or at least to acknowledge the fact that all three, and there are four, but all three of these, what I like to call Jesus narratives, the Gospels, the story of Jesus, were written to different audiences for different purposes. Same ideas, but different idea. And in some ways, if you're in college or in high school and you're writing a paper, and you are writing it to two different professors that have different ideas, want different stuff, you may write the same topic, but you're going to write it differently because of the professor. So these are written to different audiences, even though they're the same ideas. So Mark 13, verse 1, as Jesus was leaving the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings. Do you see all these great buildings?" He replied, "Not one stone will be left upon another. Every one will be thrown down." And as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what will be the sign that they are about to be fulfilled?" So at least in Mark, who is Jesus sharing all this stuff with? Peter, James, and John, and Andrew. For whatever reason, Mark chooses to share it with this angle that 4 of the 12, and 2 of them, the 2 sets of brothers, asked him this question, and they did it privately. And so the rest of this, he's explaining it to them. And there are probably a couple of different ideas here. From a scholarship standpoint, in terms of the 4 Gospels, it is believed that Mark received most of his information from Peter. And then you have, about 2 decades later, give or take, Matthew and Luke borrowed, used, kind of cut and pasted in a way. That's probably not the best way to put it. But I don't remember what the percentage is. About 60+% of Mark is in Matthew and Luke. Some of them verbatim. And then, of course, Luke states very explicitly that there were other gospels out there. Many people have have done the very same thing I'm about to do. Just gather all this information about Jesus and put it out there. So apparently there was a lot of gospels out there. And Luke is one of those. The reason I share that is because, growing up, what is the order of the gospels? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And yet it appears that Mark was written about 2 decades before Matthew and Luke. And then John about 2 decades after Matthew and Luke. So different audiences. That's why a lot of these things are rearranged. You find the Sermon on the Mount in 3 chapters, Matthew 5 through 7. But in Luke, it's in different places. And not all of it is there. So different audiences, different outcomes. And anything you notice different in Mark that you didn't see in Matthew in terms of this whole section? Whenever you read this section, whether it's Matthew, Mark, or Luke, because it's in all 3, does anything strike you as interesting, as unusual, I guess, when you read through this? Because I know you just read it this last week. I'm kidding. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Where does it say that? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. 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 Great point. So, what's that? Yeah. 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 Right. Right. So no, that is a really, really good point in terms of, context and what Jesus is getting at. And this is what I think is happening. What is about to happen to the Jews in this situation, in this setting, this context? What is about to happen? Right. Yeah. Right. Who's who? Yeah. Absolutely. What else took place on this day? And it's not a trick question. Jerusalem's destroyed. Jerusalem's gone. And it's the Romans that do it. And it is the Son of Man and God and his angels that Jesus describes that does this. God takes out his own people. And so for me personally, I don't think that he is saying that it's never been this bad before and it's never going to be this bad again. I think he is using this idea of it's, at least the NIV puts it, a distress unequaled from the beginning. And it's never going to happen like this again. Not in terms of what actually happens, but God is going to destroy his people. God's going to do it, not some other group like, as you were talking about with Hitler and the Germans. It's God's going to do this. And that is such a terrible, unnecessary, awful thing, because it's not as if this is just some random group. This goes all the way back to Abraham. And with all of the things I believe that Jesus does, from whether it's Matthew 21 till now, Luke 12 to 16, 17, 18, he just, all the parables he uses, he builds this thing up to where he essentially says the same thing over and over again. God gave you a gift, and he gave you like a century or a millennia to not just fix it, but to appreciate it, to build it up, to help it to honor God. And you totally messed it up. And now he's going to wipe you off the map because of it. That's what I think he's referring to in terms of unequaled, never to be seen again. That's what I think. But that's a great point. Anyone else? Okay, go over to Luke. Luke 21. Yeah. Oh, Luke 21. Starting in verse 5. Some of his disciples were remarking about how the temple was adorned with beautiful stones and with gifts dedicated to God. And so notice both Matthew and Luke, and I guess Mark too, they're have you ever wondered, why does this conversation even begin? I mean, did they not have these conversations before? Why just randomly, as they're walking around the temple, it just made me think of I got to go visit Jerry World about, I don't know, 12 years ago, and when they give their tours. Have you ever been to a massive football stadium? Anybody? We got to go to I say Jerry World, Cowboy Stadium, the new one in Dallas, and we got to visit in it. Oh, that sucker is massive. I mean, it's just this huge stadium. And at least at the time, it had the biggest Megatron TV screen. So everybody had a good seat. So wherever you were sitting, you could see this massive, I don't know how big it is. It's almost the size of the football field. It's just huge. It's massive. As they're walking around the temple, they're going they're remarking about how the temple is adorned with beautiful stones, with gifts dedicated to God. They're just talking about it. And it's as if Jesus, not randomly, because it's not random, but he's almost like saying to them, by the way, just enjoy it, because it's about to be gone. And as we read through this, as opposed to seeing it, imagine their response. This rabbi that they've been following for, 2-ish years is now telling them, and they've seen him heal. He's taught different stuff. He's got a whole different approach to things about him. He eats with prostitutes and tax collectors and sinners. He's a very different rabbi. He's what? Stills a storm. Does crazy things. And this is an aside also, but I'm glad Bob brought that up. And I don't know if you've ever connected these dots before, and I'm not assuming any great hierarchy because I have. If you notice, one of the things all the Gospels do, there's 4 different categories that Jesus was able to not only dip into but have full control over. So he heals people. He exorcises demons. He controls nature. And in terms of his teachings, he taught with authority. He taught differently than anybody else. So he's a very, very unique rabbi in all of those ways. I mean, he doesn't say, I tell you what, I'm going to tell it to stop raining and storming. By the time we get to the shore, it should be done. I tell you, I'm going to heal this guy from his eyes. Come back in a week and tell me how you're doing. Can you see any better? Just boom, it's done. Not just control, but absolute authority over these things. And this is toward the end of his ministry. They're walking around talking about the temple, how beautiful it is, how adorned it is. For these disciples, these apostles, how long have they been around the temple? Yeah, they're very accustomed to it. And they're talking about it in these glowing ways. And then Jesus pops up and says, enjoy it, because it's going to be gone. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Not one to be on top of the other. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. Imagine what's going on in these. Now, I'm going to call them simple-minded guys. I'm not calling them stupid or ignorant at all, but they're fishermen. And as they look at this thing, and that's why I think it's, as opposed to reading it, to try and process how they said this, because how do we read this? Verse 7. So then they asked, so teacher, when's this going to happen? What's it going to look like? You think that's how they asked that? It's like, what? You've taught some weird stuff before. What? How are we going to know? What's it going to look like? When's this going to happen? When is the sign that they are about to take place? And then, as we understand it, pretty much goes through the same stuff that Mark gives us, that Matthew gives us. Gets into a lot of what could be perceived as motifs, metaphors, whatever you want to call it. Great earthquakes, famines, pestilences in various places, fearful events, great signs from heaven. Now, what we understand about the destruction of Jerusalem is it was intense, it was complete, and it was bad. And I say that because I just called some of this stuff imagery and whatever, but there were some terrible, terrible things that took place as a result of this. Verse 20, when you see Jerusalem being surrounded by armies, what are you going to know? It's about to go down. And you better get out of there, because this just occurred to me that I'm kind of curious about, that when you see this stuff happening, now when's it going to happen again? Let's say this is 32-ish AD, and this is going to happen in 70. So you got just a little less than 40 years before this happened, but he's given them specifics. When you see this happening. So say, it's believed that the disciples were between, was it like 15 and 19? So say they're 17, shoot in the middle. 17 years old, fisherman, tax collector, different people, huh? They're going to be 45 when this actually happens. And imagine as it starts happening and they're like, is this what he was talking about? We're hearing about different stuff. So between now and 70, you're going to hear about different messiahs. You're going to hear about different stuff going on. You stick with what I'm telling you right now. Now, why would they believe him? And I'm not asking you in terms of, because he was Jesus. Why would they believe what he was telling them was accurate, genuine, authentic, true? Yeah.
The Holy Spirit came back to them.
Okay.
Reminded them of all the things that he had said.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great point. Yeah. See, I agree with you, but in this moment, it's almost like Jesus could sit down with him and say, do you believe me? Like, you did exorcise that guy demon. Just saw you heal a guy that was blind. Your teachings are very original and authentic. When we were on the storm, it got really, really bad. You just stopped it. Yeah, I think I'll go with what you said. I think I'll believe you. As opposed to him just throwing this out and he hasn't done a lot of things yet. All right, any other thoughts? We could go through all of this stuff, but it's kind of all, at least to me, is the way that I think about stuff. It's kind of all the same thing in terms of what's coming and how they're going to process this stuff. And I just have a hard time getting away from the fact that, it's almost as if you're talking to somebody and, by the end of the week, the storm's going to come in. Or by next month, this is going to happen financially, and you're like, okay, and you kind of get yourself worked up. This is almost a generation away, you know? Yeah, Ty. What's that? Yeah.
Because he says, this generation
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But then he goes on and he says, be careful, your heart's way down there, or your heart's going to go down. Present reminisce, anxiety of life, and that day will close upon you suddenly like a trap, for it will come on all those who live on the face of the whole earth. So it almost like he's talking about two different things.
Okay.
One is the destruction of the temple,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
But then maybe this is talking about the destruction of the whole earth.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, thank you for offering that. Now, I'm going to share this one more time, and then we'll move on, because I'm curious about verse 36. The section from 30 through 35, to me, is just, it's actually 30 and 31. Just very interesting to me, because normally for the Jews, the Son of Man is a good thing for them. The Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory is for them. God sending his angels with the loud trumpet call. All of these things are what God does for them to take care of them. But now the Son of Man is going to come to destroy Jerusalem. The angels are going to come with him, the messengers, to destroy them. There's going to be a loud trumpet call. There's going to be a victory, but it's going to be against the Jews, against the temple. It's going to be torn down like secular nations were. Now it's going to be toward the Jews. All right, so verse 36. And obviously this is in response to, at the very beginning, Matthew 24. Matthew 24. Yes. So we did Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We would have done John, but it's not there for whatever reason. So after Jesus says this, Matthew 24 and verse 3, as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. So apparently, who was he talking to? Who did he say this before, according to Matthew? To the crowds. He said it to a lot of people. But then the disciples came to him privately, which is interesting because Mark, I think it's Mark, maybe it's Luke, has the 4 disciples coming to him privately. And maybe disciples here is those 4. Who knows? I'm not trying to make an issue where there's not one. I just find that interesting. So tell us, when will this happen? So what is this? What he just said. Yeah. The temple's going to be torn down. And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So this may not be something you question or think about, but why would these disciples at this time ask about the sign of his coming and the end of the age? Because the word for age here, we divide them into 3, where you have the patriarchal, the Mosaic, and then the Christian. They're ages. And the word for age here, at least as I have learned, researched, whatever you want to call it, is typically a period of time, however long that time is. So why would they be asking about the end of the age? And what age are they talking about? So there's the destruction of Jerusalem. When's that going to happen? What will be the sign of your coming? And I don't know that he mentioned that, so why would they ask that? And of the end of the age. So he seems to answer 2 of their 3 questions, at least that I can tell. And then beginning in verse 36, but of that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. I did look this up because I was very curious. If Jesus, and I say if, not that there's a possibility that he's not, just more of an argument style, if he is God and the Messiah, then he's omnipotent and knows everything. So why would it be important that he would say? Now, some manuscripts don't have this. I don't know how authentic they are, but some do not. They just say the angels do not, only the Father. It skips the nor the Son. But why would Jesus not know? And one of the answers that was offered is because while he was human, he was human. Now, yes, he was both God and he was divine and human, but he was human. So there's stuff he doesn't know. There's stuff that is given to the Father. You know, in John, much of John is Jesus saying, I am here to do my Father's work. He makes the design, I carry it out. So I don't know when this is going to happen in terms of his humanity. Then when he, ascends and goes back to heaven, he then knows. And it's this idea of separating his deity from his humanity. Take that for what it's worth. As was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the coming of the Son of Man. In the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying and given to marriage, up to the day that Noah entered the ark. Was that the second bell? I honestly, was it, Ty? Okay, all right. We'll continue here next week, Lord willing, and move on to chapter 25, depending upon how far we get here. Any closing thoughts, you guys? Just out of curiosity, has this gotten about as clear as mud, or are you guys, is this a good study for you? You enjoying it? That's the answer I thought I would get. All right.
You guys can comments.